Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
It had been snowing for days. The snowflakes were so delicate and the snowdrifts were so airy, like in a fairy tale read to little children by their mothers or grandmothers at bedtime. There was no wind and nothing prevented this beauty from sitting on the eyelashes and hair, making beautiful the already beautiful girls. Alice walked with her head held high and caught snowflakes with her mouth. They had another fight with her mom, Megan, who was against her relationship with John. She didn't like this handsome, tall brunette who had charmed her daughter as soon as he offered her a ride home. Despite his youth, he was making good money, having a profession that always kept him in the money. He was a plastic surgeon. Of course, not without the help of his father, Victor. He had his own clinic, where after the institute and came to work his son, John. John did not immediately become a leading surgeon, but the attitude of his son, his persistence, Victor was impressed. He was stingy on praise, but he supported his son and saw in him a future thrifty owner of his brainchild. Alice also liked the young man. She was not a beauty, but she was damn good. She was a part-time student at a law university and worked as a paralegal. The salary was low, but the prospect of working in the prosecutor's office forced the girl to work hard. Mom, where she could insert her 5 kopecks, and tried to spoil the relationship between the young people. Today, Mom surpassed herself, having time to answer the cell phone while her daughter was taking a shower and say that Alice is busy all evening and asked not to disturb her. Mom, who asked you to answer John like that? We have plans for tonight. Do you want me to go and live in an apartment? It's about time I did, by the way. A grown girl should be separated from her parents. So you can go out with nasty boys without interference. Did I get that right? Ma, why did you like him so much? He's handsome, smart, rich, in love with me, and you're just some kind of demon in you. What kind of profession is a plastic surgeon, where 24/7 he has naked rich women shaking their tits in front of him to make them 5 times bigger? How much interest does he have left at the end of the day, let alone the week, for his wife? Answer me, please. Ma, what about male surgeons, gynecologists? I can't imagine that either. I'm asking you to wrap it up. Dustin, my friend Maria's son, wants to meet you. He's a good kid. He works in a bank, goes to economics, and he's the right age for you. I see you've already made up your mind for me. You shouldn't do that to me, Monty. I've known Dustin a long time. We used to sit in the sandbox together and sell each other sandpits. I only see him as a friend, and he sees me the same way, by the way. Megan wanted to say something else to her daughter in favor of Dustin, but Alice ran out of the house so as not to hear how her mother would use her last, most murderous argument, clutching at her heart. Call an ambulance. You're making me sick again. John had his own idea of a family. He wanted to live in the country in his own house, to have children, a wife who would not work, and a dog. He adored sheepdogs. But Alice did not want to stay at home. She liked to benefit the family both financially and morally, not to guard the house all day long with a sheepdog. John respected her opinion, but he did not understand why sitting at home could not develop and remain an interesting person. You can't rely only on your husband. A woman should also be sure that if she is alone, she will be able to provide for herself. We haven't married yet, and you're already alone. I don't like this attitude, John said in an offended tone. No, not at all. I meant that a woman should not live only at the expense of a man, but she should be worth something herself. No offense. And she smiled that inimitable smile that made a man's heart beat at an accelerated pace. A week later, Alice rented a room not far from her work, so she wouldn't have to pay for a cab when she was late. The room was in a 1-bedroom apartment she shared with a woman in her 40s who had come to Washington to work. Megan hadn't believed until the last minute that her daughter would decide to leave her parents. You're gonna take me to my grave? Where are you gonna go? Daria, I'm asking you to stop pushing her. You've given her a hard time. What? Are you talking to me? You. Remember when you ran away from home to your mom's loud tantrums? Nothing stopped you, not even her threats. Why don't you let your child breathe? Could you be quiet right now? No, I can't. Go on, my daughter, but don't forget to call us. Of course I won't. I know you're a good girl, and he kissed his favorite daughter. The mother stood offended, but kissed her too and asked them not to forget. Her parents stood at the window and waved at her. After looking around in her new abode, Alice immediately called John. "Hi, I'm inviting you to a housewarming party." "What kind of a housewarming? Did you move in?" "No, just me. I'll be living apart from my parents now. Write down the address." He arrived an hour later with a trunk full of groceries, champagne, and all the goodies from the restaurant. They had a feast for the world. They stayed up late. Both of them did not want to part, but they found the strength to say goodbye and say goodnight to each other. For her age, Alice was a wise enough girl, and John liked her not as an object for flirting, as there were plenty of such candidates, but as a person who could offer a real serious relationship. After she moved in, they both began to feel that they were a family. After work, he would go to the store, buy flowers for his beloved, then something for tea and hurry home. He'd, of course, dreamed a little bit about another house, but he began to understand the proverb that with a sweet paradise and in a shalash, Alice tried to make a cozy room from a foreign, cold housing. From the house, the girl brought lovely trinkets, books, changed the curtains, hung favorite photos, thereby turning the room into a cozy nest, which wanted to fly and spend all free time in it. They hardly ever quarreled with John, but if they did, it was a storm. It came on suddenly, but it was good that it didn't last forever. They were both resilient. Toward nightfall, he would go home, though he wanted to stay. John was more experienced than this girl and saw that she was not ready for such a close relationship and did not insist. It happened on New Year's Eve, which they decided to celebrate together in this small room. But the man wanted to be a real Santa Claus on New Year's Eve and surprise Alice. In the travel agency, he got to a real professional, and she recommended the Dominican Republic. So far away, it's at the end of the world, near Cuba, right in the Atlantic Ocean. That's right. But there won't be a decorated Christmas tree, the main attribute of New Year's Eve. Don't worry about that. The locals will put up palm trees instead of the usual Christmas trees, and you'll have a festive atmosphere. The sea there is warm. Sunsets will amaze you with their colors, and a large number of entertainment will not give boredom on New Year's vacations. The time difference will allow you to start celebrating New Year's Eve in the afternoon. You will dance on sandy beaches and build castles instead of snowmen. And there will be plenty of snow and cold for you when you get back. She had such a delicious story to tell, backed up by amazing photos that he gave up. He had to wish his beloved a happy new year a week early. She had to prepare herself morally, and most importantly, to prepare her mother. Sunday afternoon was a parent's day. She would arrive at their house in the afternoon and be there practically until evening. Sometimes we had to help with cleaning and ironing. Mom didn't like that. "Ma, I'm going to the Dominican Republic for New Year's Eve," Alice said and kept quiet. There was no answer, and she thought that her mother had not heard. "Ma, I hear you, I hear you. I'm just trying to find the words to answer you in a civilized way. Aren't you happy for me? I'll tell you this, don't jump headfirst into this relationship. This trip might keep you from graduating. You know what I mean, right? And education is very important. Everything is new to you in this relationship. Everything is new. Everything is new. Everything is exciting. If John loves you, he'll take care of you and let you graduate without jeopardizing your relationship. Don't you agree?" "I think I'm with my mom on this one," Harry said. "Think about your future, my daughter." "I understand, and I'll try not to disappoint you." On December 30, they left. There were many people who wanted to celebrate New Year's Eve in a warm place. The hotel room was bigger than the 3-room apartment of Alice's parents. It was a 5-star hotel, and from the windows of the room they had a magnificent landscape. They met the new year in bathing suits and swimming trunks. Those who have vacationed here not the first time thoughtfully brought tinsel and masks. It was great and fun. At midnight they bathed and wished each other Happy New Year. In the morning they returned to the hotel, and the long-awaited night came, which, as it turned out, was waiting not only for John. She both wanted and dreaded that night. Afraid of not liking the man, afraid of doing something wrong, afraid of everything, until John held her in his arms. He was the first man in her life, and trusting him made her feel far away from that hotel room. Her sensuality was just awakening, and she was giving her lover all of herself and dissolving in him. Now she waited for night every day, waiting for the night to enjoy the man she loved again. She caught herself thinking that she would like to have a child with John, but remembering her mother's words, she told herself, "Not now." It was as if she'd been to heaven on earth. At times like this, time flies fast, and no matter how much you want to go back, you have to. Washington met them with frost and snowfall. Parting, Alice hugged John and thanked him for the New Year's gift. "Darling, do you want to strangle me?" But what a beautiful death it would be, in the arms of a woman. I never said that to anyone. She raised her big eyes to the man, but I'll tell you, you are wonderful, John. You're lovely too. And so they parted, but not for long. Days went by, months went by months. The warm season and their first little anniversary were approaching. They met in the summer. It was raining so hard, with thunder. Nature as if taking a shower, after which she wanted to put on beautiful clothes and shine bright colors. It was in such a rain that John offered her a ride. She gladly dived into his warm mariachi and, baring her teeth, said, "Thank you for not letting me be lost. I'm Alice. I'm a doctor, so it's my duty to save those who need my help." Drove her all the way home and left without even asking for his phone number, and the girl really liked him. A handsome brunette, about 25, older than her and very confident. John had a complicated relationship with the daughter of the hen doctor at his father's clinic, Ariana. She was a very modern girl. She believed that desires should never be restrained, and if you want something, it should not be embarrassed. The family also had its own views, which she defended and always said that children prefer daddies. At first, John was shocked by such frankness. He would not have been able to, then got used to it, and even some of her bold judgments shared. Their romance grew hotter by the day. The weather was hot, and so was their relationship. They met at her place, but in motels, the places were different, but Ariana was always irresistible. She took her work much more seriously than her relationships with the opposite sex. She was a head nurse with 15 nurses under her command, each of whom knew their duties by heart and performed them professionally, knowing that Ariana was not to be trifled with. Being a strict boss, she believed that in the clinic there was no other way. For this, she was very respected by her father. As a lover, Ariana was very good. Sex for her was a fun adventure, and she always had a lot of fun. John never knew what she would be like today, much less tomorrow. When he thought of her, he always thought of sex, because it was inseparable. But he would never take her as his wife, thinking that married life wasn't for her, too boring. But Ariana longed to have him around. She saw John as a reliable man, a wonderful husband, and maybe even the father of her children. Time passed, but he did not offer anything, and once clarified noisily relations, the woman realized that he did not need him as a wife. He remembered Ariana's face at that moment. It was pale and angry. She looked at him and waited for a direct answer. "I need to hear from you why we are still not married." "I can't marry you." He heard his voice from outside, and he couldn't believe he could say that to her. She looked at him with interest. "May I know why?" He was ready to confess that he did not love her and had never loved her, but that, in his opinion, was too cruel and unfair to her. She was good in looks, and as a lover, she had everything going for her. But he just didn't love her, and that said it all. "We would never be happy." She stared at him, catching every word, then stood up abruptly, said goodbye, and left. She found the strength to quit the next day and take a job at another clinic. She broke up with John immediately and completely. She didn't cut off the tail piece by piece. That was her style. Both parting was not easy, but if there is no future in the relationship, why drag it out? That's when he met Alice, who was the complete opposite of Ariana. The second time he saw her 2 weeks later and also offered her a ride. They met like old friends and chatted the whole way. This time, the new acquaintance asked permission to call, and Alice left her phone number. That's how they began building a relationship that turned a year old in the summer. Alyssa's mom, Megan, asked her daughter to bring John to visit them. Parents should know who their only daughter was dating and spending all her free time with. "Mom, what's this for? Are we getting married? What are you doing? Why can't Dad and I meet the man our daughter likes?" "Because it's still only a man. When he proposes to me, you will become my fiancé, then I'll bring him to meet. If you meet him now, he won't become a fiancé, given your attitude towards him. So leave her alone. She's saying all the right things." "Thanks, Daddy. You're just in time as always." Daddy wasn't much of a talker. He'd enter into a conversation as a last resort, but he always had the last word. Mom, waving her hand, went to the kitchen, and Alice began to get ready to go to her place to celebrate with her favorite person her small anniversary, a year since the day of their acquaintance. Alice and John's relationship was on an upward trend. They were happy together. The small room became their first home, cozy, warm. It is the merit of Alice, who tried to make her man rush here to her. Joan several times offered to rent another, more comfortable apartment, but Alice did not agree. Here she felt like a mistress, and in the new place that John wanted to rent, she would not have such a feeling. She valued her independence. Their relationship was already in its third year, but she was always waiting for some surprises, troubles, and they never came. She slowly began to calm down and forget about her fears. One day while walking in the park, Alice noticed, "John, do you remember how small these trees were when we walked here for the first time?" "Yes, I remember, and the alley has grown bigger. The trees have grown so big. Look up, the foliage is so thick and the light barely shines through." 2.5 years is a long time. Isn't it too soon to talk about getting married? You're in your last year of college. You'll graduate in a heartbeat. Yes, I agree with you there. But you don't say anything about love. It's as if you don't have the words to express your feelings for me. No, Alice, I take them too seriously. That's why I don't throw them away or they'll lose their value. It takes a few seconds to say I love you and a lifetime to say I love you. That's what I'll do when we're married. He drew her to him and lifted her slightly, their faces facing each other. "I love you, darling, and I want to live my whole life with you. I want to have children with you that I'll love." He barely touched her lips, so gently, carefully. "I love you too, and I want to live with you all my life, to have children by you whom I will adore. Let's make a deal. As soon as I pass the winter session, we'll go to meet my parents and apply, and after the summer session, we'll celebrate the wedding and go away for a week. What do you think of my plan?" "It's okay, but I'd move it up 6 months. My parents are wondering how long I've been in a relationship with you, and they want to see this magician who manages to keep me in suspense all this time." He was going to stay at her place tonight, but a call from his mom changed his plans. "Alice, I'm sorry, I have to go. There's something at home. I'll go check it out. If it's okay, I'll come back." But there was no coming back. When he entered the apartment, he saw Anna on the floor. She could not get up. Something was with her leg. It was good that the phone was in his pocket, or she would not have been able to call. After fixing her leg with improvised means, her son called an ambulance. She was immediately x-rayed, which showed a fracture, but not of the femoral neck, as John had feared. They gave her a painkiller shot, a cast, and left her in the hospital. "We'll keep her for a couple of days, and if she has no fever, we'll let her go." He drove home and only now felt tired. As he drove past a huge shopping center, he saw a girl fighting off 3 teenagers who were trying to take away her bag. The shopping bags were lying on the pavement and she could barely manage them. The tallest one hit her and she fell. He bent down to take the bag off her shoulder, but a man was running towards the girl, who turned out to be Ariana. John, having parked his car, also rushed to her aid. He grabbed the man who had hit the girl by the scruff of the neck and called the police. Ariana had a black eye, was crying, picking up her bags, and asked John to take her home. "You don't have a car?" "Yeah, I took it to the service this morning. I noticed them downtown, so I put the bag over my shoulder so it'd be harder to take it off. And when I came out, they came at me like that. The gang didn't expect that I didn't give up so easily," she said, smiling. After powdering the bruise a little, she put on her glasses. "I'll have to wear them for a couple weeks now, the bastards." John drove her home and helped her up to the apartment so that she knew nothing would happen to her. He refused the wine, but had a cup of tea. "Well, can I give you my new phone number? Time has passed, we've calmed down, maybe we'll stay friends. And why not? We'll congratulate each other on birthdays, and maybe even the new year." Taking his any red wine with him, Ariana closed the door behind John. He was a good-looking man, she mentally noted, and regretted that she had given up so unforgivably quickly, giving him to some strange woman. John did not go to Alice. After such a busy day, wanted to take a shower and go to bed. But Anna had to stay in the hospital for almost a month. High fever and pressure did not allow her to be discharged home. Her son came to her mother's house in the morning, brought everything she had asked for since the evening, and Victor visited her after work. John didn't see Alice much. He couldn't even spend the night at her place. He had 2 or 3 surgeries a day, which was very exhausting. Sometimes he had to visit his mother in the evening. His father couldn't always make it. One night he got a call from Ariana. "Hi, how are you?" "I'm fine. How are your bruises?" "They're not gone yet, but they're going away. Can you give me a ride?" "No, Ariana, I can't." "Why not? We agreed that we're friends, and you can't say no to friends." Sometimes I can. I'm at my mom's in the hospital, so call a cab. And anticipating her question, I said, I won't be back for a while. Say hello to Anna. Let her get well. You take care of yourself too. I'll do my best. Ariana's voice sounded sad. For some reason, she didn't believe John's words about the hospital and called his home phone number. But no one answered. But that didn't convince her either, so she called her father at the hospital. Dad, hello. Do you know what's going on with Victor's wife? She's in the hospital. She fell and broke her leg. Why are you so interested all of a sudden? No, I'm fine, thanks. So it's not that bad. His refusal is not to get rid of her, but to take care of her mother, Ariana thought, raising her hand to stop the cab. Heading home, John decided to call Alice. How are you, my love? Where are you now? I had to work late today. I'm just getting off. I'll pick you up. I missed you. Well, good. I'll be glad to see you too. She was already standing there waiting for him. John got out of the car and hugged Alice. He squeezed her tighter and tighter, wanting to feel her all over. John, people are watching. Let's go to Mary's. How beautiful you are, darling. He leaned down and kissed her. The girl, too, was full of tenderness. She longed for their meetings, which had become quite rare. They talked the whole evening and did not notice how the night crept up. Now, as she slept on his shoulder and he drove her home, he believed that they would have a beautiful family and children. The car stopped outside the driveway and Alice was asleep. He waited a little while and slowly began to wake her up. She opened her eyes, not realizing where she was, but quickly remembered and apologized for falling asleep. Why don't you stay at my place? It's been so long since we've been together. Of course, I wanted to stay, but I can see how tired you are. You go ahead. I'll get my stuff out of the car and catch up with you. Taking things from the back seat, he stumbled over a powder bottle, put it in his pocket, thinking it was Alice's. Slamming the car doors shut, he ran to catch up with the girl. Alice, you left it in the car, John said, holding it out to her. Her look was first surprised, then confused, and then, gathering courage, she asked, Are you deceiving me? In what way? Directly, it's not my thing. I can't afford to buy brand-name French cosmetics yet. They don't pay paralegals enough, you know. Alice, wait, what are you accusing me of? Nothing yet. But if you tell me the truth, I'll decide for myself whether or not to charge you with anything. Tell me. Come on. Alice, I don't like your tone. Think about it. If I had another man's woman in my car, would I? And then he remembered that a few days ago, Ariana was sitting there. Oh, God, I remembered. My ex-colleague Ariana was sitting there. Sit down, I'll tell you all about it. After listening to his explanation, the girl said in our lives we often have people from the past, former friends or girlfriends. Did not think about why she suddenly appeared. I think you should not expect anything good from a person who was not around for so long. No, Alice, it's a coincidence. If I'd gone the other way, I might not have seen her for as long. She nodded, not sure if he really believed what he was saying, although John was very convincing. This time it ended well. Alice lay in his arms and thought she was perfectly happy. He felt good with her too. He enjoyed the smell of her soft body and the sheen of her silky hair. He liked everything about her. Do you believe me? No more hard feelings? No, I'm sorry. I was afraid I'd already lost you. I'm sorry I doubted you. I love you very much, that's all. I love you too. Let's trust each other. I agree. It was about 4:00 a.m. when they finally fell asleep. They both didn't hear the alarm clock, jumped up and got dressed in 15 minutes and left the house. A few days later, John received another call from Ariana. Listen, I didn't leave a powder bottle in your car. I searched everything. Then I remembered that after that incident at the shopping center, I powdered my bruise in the car. Yeah, I left it in the car. I found it in the backseat. I'm having a hard day today, so come to the clinic by the end of the day. I'll give it back to Marion. When John gave Ariana the powder bottle, he asked her not to leave her things in his car. Or what? She asked defiantly. Because that little thing almost ruined my life. Can you imagine? A powder bottle. After that, I realized how fragile relationships are. How easy it is to break the harmony. All it takes is a bad word or some powder. What am I hearing? Is John really that serious? Is he going to get married? Ariana asked, afraid to hear the answer. Yes, he is. He's met a trustworthy, kind man, and he has no intention of losing her. That's a strong claim. So you've settled down and decided to become a family man. Yes, it's time. Ariana left upset. She couldn't believe Bogdanov was getting married. She wanted to destroy everything in her way, but not to let John realize his plan. Of course, if they were for real, it was unlikely she would be able to destroy those feelings. Sooner or later, she might pay for her own actions. But that wasn't stopping her at the moment. She wanted to see the lucky girl who had managed to seduce such a man. They met at that ill-fated shopping center when John rushed to Ariana's aid. The young people were getting ready for John's birthday. They bought groceries, champagne, and on their way out of the store, they ran into Ariana. "What a reunion," Ariana said too loudly. "Janushka, happy birthday to you," and she reached out to touch his cheek. "Thank you for not forgetting." "How could I?" Ariana said, clapping him on the shoulder. Glancing at his companion, she saw fear in her eyes. Fear of losing the man she was clinging to so frantically. Fear of being abandoned. Alice saw in this beautiful, bold woman a rival whom, before she had even begun, she was already afraid to fight. She saw her as a confident woman of the highest quality. And Ariana realized that this hen was not worthy of a man like John. This woman will not fight for her happiness. Too proud, too jealous, doesn't feel her worth, and therefore also stupid. "I'll win this fight," she thought, and grinned wryly. "It was good to see you," and waving goodbye, went into the store. Alice was scared, but she didn't show it. "Alice, this is the Ariana who left her powder bottle in my car." "Yeah, I get it. A very beautiful, confident woman," said the girl with envy in her voice. "She acted as if you two were very close at some point. Am I right?" And that's where he got cold feet. He could not tell the truth. He realized that his beloved Alice will speculate what and how it was between them, and he, following the proverb, "lie to save," answered, "No, there was no relationship. We are former colleagues. Our fathers worked together and have been friends for a long time." His voice was calm, affectionate. She smiled and nodded. It was hard for her to speak, to think that what he said wasn't true. She was afraid to imagine her life without John. He sensed that the meeting with Ariana hadn't been good for her, so he offered to go to her place and have dinner with her. But to his surprise, she flatly refused, citing a sudden headache and a desire to be alone. "All right, let me." "Don't. I'll get there on my own." "Don't worry, I'll be fine soon," she replied and stopped the cab. She couldn't sleep, staring at her computer, drinking coffee constantly, and only stopped when she felt her heart jumping out. She found a picture of Ariana at that clinic where John worked. She looked at every feature of her face, and there was nothing to pick on. She was very beautiful. And she couldn't believe John's words that nothing had happened between them. It was hard for her to imagine how she could pass by such a beauty. And the more she looked at her, the worse she felt. She looked awful, with a mournful expression on her face, as if she had buried her nearest and dearest, and a bottomless grief in her eyes. "No, I can't do this," she said to herself. "This will accomplish nothing. What will be, will be." She had to get over the fear of being abandoned. She had once read that life was a game where the rules stated that anything could happen. That's exactly what she meant. And sure, I can get dumped, but I don't have to leave myself, because life doesn't end here. There'll be another John or Carl or whoever, but you have to love yourself and stop worrying so much, because I was scared just by Ariana's look, and I hurt John for some reason. After taking a cold shower, she came to herself, put on a warm robe, and as soon as her head touched the pillow, she fell asleep. Alice was approaching the winter session, and with it John's birthday. She was even afraid to admit to herself that she was more afraid of meeting his parents than of exams. So, tomorrow John would turn 27, a man in the prime of his life. He's handsome, he's a great professional, and I think he loves me. Again this insecurity mentally scolded herself, Alice. She bought him a medal as a gift, on which engraved the words, "The best plastic surgeon of all time." Well, it's a joke gift, decided the girl. She also bought him a player for listening to music while jogging. All this was beautifully packaged, and at the appointed time, she rang the doorbell. Victor opened the door. "Are you Alice?" he asked, very friendly. "Yes, I am." The girl smiled strangely. "John gave us such a picture of you that it would be silly not to recognize you. Let me help you take off your coat. Come on in." She went into the living room, where a large, beautiful table was set. She noted to herself that there were more guests than she'd expected. "Hello, darling," John said loudly, which made her wince. "John, darling, I wish you a happy birthday. I love you," and handed her a box wrapped in shiny paper. The celebrant immediately opened it and laughed for a long time at the medal, immediately put it on himself, and showed everyone what he had achieved at work and how he was valued. The player was also to his liking. When everyone sat down at the table, the atmosphere lightened up a bit. Everyone joked and made toasts. Anna kept looking at the girl with an appraising look, then transferred her eyes to her son, who sat next to her, and lowered her dissatisfied gaze to her plate. When it was Alice's turn to make a toast, she was very nervous, but she started cheerfully. At that time, the doorbell rang. "Mom, I didn't invite anyone else." "Who is it?" "I think it's the Stones. How could I not invite them to a family reunion? I mean, we're practically related." The hallway became noisy with hugs and kisses. "Son, go meet the guests," Mom shouted. "Alice, I'm sorry, I'll be right back." In the hallway, he saw the entire Stoner family, including Ariana. Alice was sitting alone at the table and felt unwanted by anyone, as if she wanted to be in her room and not see or hear anyone. At that time, the guest entered the room. When everyone was seated, John introduced Alice as his girlfriend. Mom grimaced, and only Dad smiled and began to fill the glasses with champagne. Alice's toast was safely forgotten, and they began to listen to the toasts of the guests. Ariana was the first to stand up. She had obviously prepared for the toast, and the gift she gave was with a big hint. The toast was great, with humor and wishes for happiness. She handed the birthday boy a small box containing a keychain in the shape of a Hippocratic bowl. It was quite an expensive thing, made of silver, which was confirmed by the hallmark on the back of the gift. "Where are your keys?" Ariana asked. "Look, not now," John said with irritation in his voice. "No, right now," and she went into the hallway. "Are these yours?" His, Ariana answered Anna. She quickly connected the keychain with John's keys, and only then she calmed down. A psychic friend had advised her to make such a gift. If you want to bind a man to yourself, then give him a keychain like yours. Identical trinkets will constantly keep two people in an energetic connection. She liked the idea, and when she saw a keychain that matched John's, she thought it was fate. Ariana went ahead and, to finish Alice off, asked John to dance. "Let's go and reminisce about our youth," Ariana said with a laugh. "I'm sorry, Ariana, but Alice asked me at the beginning of the evening, so I can't. There are so many gentlemen, you can invite anyone," and he pointed at the fathers, who were still so hot. "Son, dance with Ariana, your girlfriend won't be offended." "Mom, let me decide," and turned to Alice and asked her to dance. But she didn't want to dance, saying that it's not nice to refuse a girl. John sat like a spitfire. Ariana waited for him to get up, and the man waited for Alice, who shook her head, refusing him. When he got up and went to dance with Ariana, everyone clapped. "What a beautiful couple." John's mom couldn't resist. "Yes, Anna, you're right," echoed Ariana's mom. While John danced, Alice got up and went into the hallway to get dressed. She had nothing else to do in this house. No one came out to see her, so she quietly closed the door and quickly ran down the stairs to the bottom. Tears rolled from her eyes down her cheeks along with her mascara. A cab stood outside the house as if waiting for her. Naming the address, she continued to cry. The roads were clear, and in 15 minutes she was home. Her clothes were lying on the floor. She stood under the shower and didn't hear John calling at her door. Then pounding on the door with his fist. She came out an hour later, completely exhausted, lay down and lay there until morning with her eyes open. No sooner had Alice put the kettle on to make coffee than the doorbell rang. She looked at the clock. It was not yet 8 o'clock. When she opened the door, she saw a tired man with a faded look. "And what was that yesterday?" he immediately asked, leaning against the jamb. "Good morning to you too, come in." "I'm not having a good morning. Can you explain to me what happened yesterday?" "What happened yesterday?" "Nothing, I guess. I just realized that I was an extra and left. Did anyone notice I was gone?" "Alice, you're acting like a child. Small, mean, petulant, resentful. I told you to spend the day together and get to know each other another day. You can't mix two events like that. One is fun, the other is serious, where there's no room for strangers. You wanted something different. Well, it is what it is. The Stones are old friends. Ariana's their daughter, and even though they weren't invited, they had a right to come. Do you understand?" Of course I understand. I also understand something else. That Ariana is infatuated with you and will stop at nothing. I can't handle her. Do you understand that? You don't have to handle her. My dear girl, I had 1,000 opportunities to marry that pretty girl. But I never took them because I never loved her. I loved you. Why did you come after me when I left? If you say you love me. I didn't notice at first, and when I asked where you were, Mom said she'd gone to powder her nose. I waited about 5 minutes, then I looked in the room and it was empty. I apologized to the guests and went to your place. I rang the bell and knocked, but you didn't answer. You came here? Yes, I did. After that, Alice felt better and even a little ashamed of yesterday. She had really acted like a rude person, abandoning a man on his birthday and showing the guests that he meant nothing to her. It's bad and, above all, untrue. She loved him and was terribly jealous, even though the man never gave her a reason. I'm sorry. Yes, I did a bad thing, but no one paid attention to me. They wouldn't even listen to my toast. Alice, but it was my birthday. That's why they were paying attention to me. You noticed they gave you presents too. Wasn't my attention enough for you? You're a child, you should grow up. Did you like Ariana's present? Yeah, it was great. It's very original. But yours was just as good. Everyone tried your metal on and said it was a great idea. It's a pity you didn't see it. They were drinking coffee and she was crying quietly. He put his arm around her and gently wiped away her tears. She put her hand on his shoulder and said, I'm sorry. I spoiled your holiday. But I was so confused. You dancing with such a beautiful woman and your mother admiring you so much. I felt superfluous. I'm sorry, darling. Who told me it was okay to say no to girls? Who didn't want to go dancing with me? That girl Alice. You understand, I can't even imagine that you're not with me, that you're not making coffee for me and lying on my shoulder. Alice, I love you. You and I agreed to trust each other once. I remember. But Ariana is so unpredictable. And beautiful. You're beautiful too, very beautiful. And forget about Ariana. So your mom didn't like me? I thought when she looked at me, she felt sorry for her son, that such a handsome boy got such a me. Look, this isn't funny anymore. You're a broken record. Why is your self-esteem so low? You're smart, you're beautiful, I adore you. That's when John's cell phone started ringing. John, didn't you forget you got a surgery in 40 minutes? No, Nanachka, I'm on my way. Why are your eyes so wide open? The man asked Alice. This is my nurse, reminded about the operation, and stop flinching at every call. Okay, have a nice day. After work, I'll come over to your place. What can I buy you? Buy some good wine, I'll cook the meat. She didn't want to let him go, but she felt that he was no longer with her, but out there with his patients. So she let go of the best plastic surgeon of all time. When John rang the doorbell, Alice had everything ready. She wanted to make it up to her lover, so she decided that it would be not just a dinner, but a beautiful romantic dinner. All its attributes were on her face. She favored white. Rose petals on the white tablecloth looked even brighter, and tall candlesticks with twisted candles decorated the table. She wanted John to relax, rest after work, and plunge into the warm atmosphere she was preparing for him. When she opened the door, she didn't see John behind the huge bouquet and packages with which he literally piled into the apartment. How beautiful you are! Today more than ever. Taking the bouquet from John's hands, she placed it in a vase on the edge of the table, as if to complete the table setting. Today was her day. The meat was excellent, she looked beautiful, and the atmosphere she had created was one of love. How good I feel with you, said Alice. I don't want this evening to end. If it were possible to make it so that only you and I were in the whole world, no Ariana or Manachka or anyone else, we'd be fine. Alice, what do you care about Ariana? Forget about her like she never existed. I envy her assertive nature. It's more suited to a man than a fragile and beautiful woman like her. That's where you're wrong. She has her mom's personality. She's a very determined woman, and Ariana's like her. Veronica, Ariana's mom likes to tell how she married Pavel Ivanovich. Really? Did she? He doesn't like to tell the story, but Veronica loves it. I think she's adding things to the story that didn't really happen. But I know that Uncle Dustin liked Veronica and her girlfriend. The three of them always went out together. But one day, Veronica overheard Dustin talking to a friend, sharing that he liked both girls and couldn't decide which one to choose. When Veronica heard this, She realized this was her chance. On Saturday morning, she came to him, told him to take his passport, and dragged him to the registry office. He did not resist, and even was pleased that finally it will be put to an end. A friend, when she found out, was very upset, and at the wedding to them did not come, and after graduating from the institute left the city. She was never seen again. That's how her parents' passions boiled over. That's an interesting story. Ariana, knowing this story, will follow in her mom's footsteps. I can't listen to this anymore. He stood up, pretending to leave. Isn't there anything else to talk about but Ariana? Well, sit down, calm down. I won't talk about her anymore. The rest of the evening passed quietly. They danced, confessed their love to each other, and dreamed of their life after the wedding. They decided that they would hardly live in luxury, but they would be well provided for. John had promised to take care of that. They would never have to worry about tomorrow, or worse, think about how to make ends meet. A man, as the head of the household, will try to make his family's life prosperous. Alice's evening was wonderful. Even in the dream, it continued. They agreed to go to the registry office tomorrow. John offered to go to Alice's parents first and then to the registry office, but the girl insisted on her own, knowing how her mother feels about John. All the next day, Alice looked at the clock, but the hands were frozen in place and did not want to move to 3 o'clock, the time when John would be waiting for her at the clinic to go to the registry office. She even put the clock to her ear, checking whether it was running or not. The watch was in good working order and the time was correct. She was just nervous, and she could understand it. It wasn't every day you applied for a job. The cab took her to the clinic very quickly. Looking at the time, she realized that she had arrived half an hour early. She wanted to get out of the car and walk around, but she saw Ariana and John coming out of the clinic. She closed the doors and asked the cab driver to wait a little longer and reassured him that she would pay for the downtime. She was pounding so badly that the driver turned on the heater when he heard her teeth chattering. She saw Ariana trying to hug John, and he pulled her arms away and said something to her. She wanted so badly to hear what this woman was talking about so emotionally. "John, let's talk like adults. You don't pick up the phone when I call you. You refuse to go out for a cup of coffee. You've forgotten that we're friends and friends should see each other once in a while. Do you agree with me?" "I do, as long as it doesn't interfere with personal plans. You don't want to hear anything when I tell you I'm going to see Alice." "Tell me what you see in that plucked chicken." "Don't you talk about my future wife like that," John said loudly and grabbed her by the shoulders. Alice clenched her eyes shut and was afraid to open them. "Why are you sitting there?" the cab driver asked her. "Are they kissing?" Without opening her eyes, the girl asked. The cab driver looked at Alice and realized that she was afraid to look at all this. "No, they're hugging. I can't look at this anymore. Take me home." John was actually pulling away from Ariana's hands and trying to leave, but she was trying to stop him. "Ariana, leave me alone. Don't make me talk to you rudely. You've meant nothing to me for a long time." Everything, and he pushed her away. "Then I'll tell your chicken about our hot nights. She's probably never dreamed of anything like this. Please go ahead. I don't know what you'll get out of it. I'm not coming back to you anyway." He looked at the time. Alice should have been here by now, but she was late. The call from John made her flinch. She hesitated for a long time whether to answer or not, but her hands were shaking so much that she disconnected the call. "Maybe you overreacted, deciding to leave so soon. We should have talked." "What's there to talk about? It's clear enough." "From what I saw, nothing was clear to me," the cabbie said. "Man, they'd be happy. All the way home." She sat staring at one point. The cab driver, a man in his 50s, looked at her in the mirror and finally couldn't take it anymore. "I'm sorry, but did you do the wrong thing? I have 2 daughters myself, and I would not approve of such behavior. Why did you come out? It was obvious that the guy didn't like it with this girl. Maybe he was waiting for you to come to his aid, and you cowardly ran away from the battlefield. You don't know anything. She loves him and she's pursuing him by any means possible. Why should I get in the way? Let her pursue him. It's who he loves that counts. You know, I like that woman better than you. Fighting for her place in the sun, and you? Snot on your fist. You're beautiful. You need to be confident. No, what you did was wrong. Let him come back if he loves you. It's not the first time you've jumped up. He'll get tired of it. Let him. I won't be lost without him." "That's a good attitude, but you love him, don't you? And the guy's handsome. He's a doctor." "Yeah, he's a plastic surgeon. Makes women beautiful." You see how many women are around, and he loves you. You should appreciate that. Why don't we go back? No, I don't want to see him. The car stopped at the entrance and the girl asked to wait for 10 minutes. She quickly packed a huge suitcase with her things, removed the photos from the walls, took her favorite knickknacks. She once again looked around the room where she was so happy with John and closed the door of the apartment, knocked on the neighbor. Catherine, here are the keys. Give them to my landlady. Here's the money for the whole month. Tell her I've vacated the apartment. Why are you so suddenly out of your seat? Where are you going? To my mom's for now, I guess, and then we'll see. Goodbye. She loaded everything into Mary's car and gave her parents' address. John, not understanding anything, waited for Alice for another 20 minutes and went to her house. Called, knocked, until a neighbor came out and said that Alice no longer lives here. What do you mean? She doesn't live here anymore. Where is she now? I have no idea. She packed up and left in a cab in 15 minutes. I don't understand. Yesterday I was in one mood, today I'm in another. I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself. He went outside in total confusion. The man was a little tired of Alice's antics, but his love for this girl made him forgive. If she had moved out so suddenly, it meant that she had not had time to find another apartment, which meant that she could only go to her parents. Quickly getting into Maria's car, he stopped already in front of a familiar house. Passing the cab, which was pulling away from the entrance, he began to remember the number of the apartment, but remembered only the floor. I'll have to wait for someone to get in or out, or I won't be able to get in, John reasoned. He sat down at the entrance and waited. His head hurt and his mood was low. Ariana was just boring the hell out of him. Turns out she had called him all night yesterday, but he was so happy with Alice that he hadn't heard any calls. That's why she made this spectacle of herself today. The door to the entryway opened abruptly and kids spilled out. He went up to the right floor and immediately remembered the apartment. No one answered the door for a long time, and he was about to leave when the door opened and Alice's mom, Megan, appeared before him in all her glory. Young man, haven't they taught you any manners? If they don't open the door after 3 tries, they don't want to see you. Didn't you know that? Of course I knew that, but I'm not in the mood for sentimentality right now. Could you get Alice for me, please? The woman made a surprised face. Her neatly plucked eyebrows went up, and she confidently answered that her daughter had not lived with them for a long time and gave the address of her rented apartment. I've been there. The neighbor told me that she's moved out, and she has nowhere else to go but you. I see you're good with analytics, but we don't have it. Is there anything I can give her later? John stared into the woman's eyes, almost believing her, apologized and asked that Alice call him. I will definitely tell her, and if she wants to, of course she'll call, and slammed the door loudly. Alice heard the whole conversation between her mother and John, but never dared to go out. She thought it was his fault that Ariana was letting herself do this. If he answered her seriously, maybe even rudely, she would definitely back off. John drove home and thought about Alice. She was different from all the women he'd had before her. They were always ready to get into bed with him at will, just to stay among his girlfriends. To befriend a plastic surgeon was prestigious. But Alice was not the same. Her naivety, honesty, and keen sense of justice appealed to him. Maybe they were both wrong. He couldn't get over the reason why she hadn't come to the registry office. She couldn't have fallen out of love with him and changed her mind in a matter of hours. His anxiety was transmitted to the girl. She, too, was questioning the way she had acted. She was hurt that even the cabbie liked Ariana better. But at times like this, you forget everything you've heard, try to run away from your problems, bury your head in the sand, and behave foolishly, and when you're angry and frightened, you make one mistake after another. John tried to call her several times, but to no avail. She had thrown away her SIM card on the way to her parents' house, so she wouldn't hear his voice. John didn't give up hope of finding Alice. If she didn't want to see him again, he wouldn't impose. But he wanted to know what had happened in the 5 hours they hadn't seen each other. Why had the girl's mood changed so abruptly to decide such a serious matter as marriage? There must be very good reasons for this. He wanted to know only them. The first thing he did was to go to Alice at work, where he learned that she had quit yesterday suddenly and asked permission not to work for 2 weeks, and in her application she wrote, for family reasons. He spent the whole evening at home looking at the ceiling and wondering what he should do next. Ariana came to support him. When he could hardly tear his eyes away from the ceiling, as from a beautiful painting, he looked at the girl. I'm begging you, Go away or I'll push you out of here. Come on, we're going to the coolest club in the world. It's gonna be a hell of a program. I'm staying home. No, honey, that's not possible. They're waiting for us there. Tell everyone I have a headache or I'm dying. He smiled strangely and asked her to leave. I'll come to you tomorrow, however you want me to. The next day, he still had to go with Ariana to a mutual friend's anniversary party. He felt awful. He didn't know when it would all end, because they just wouldn't let him go before. It was like a detention where he had to smile and drink champagne, even though he would have gladly had a glass of pure water. He longed for Christine surrounded by these people who were strangers to him. How can you be bored when so many people want to cheer you up? I'm sorry, I'm not ready to party. I want to be alone to clear my head. Don't hold me back. Thank you for your efforts, but don't come to my place again. But she wouldn't even listen to him, much less understand. You shouldn't be alone right now. Don't bother me. I'll decide what to do. And he left that house he hated. She didn't have time to get into his Mariana. He drove off before she could open the car door. Ariana was furious at his behavior, but there was nothing she could do. She had a relationship with Anna, but even that support from her mom couldn't help Ariana get the man's attention. I'm sorry, she replied to his mom. I can't help you anymore. He seems to really love her and I'm powerless, even with my pressure. What am I hearing? Are you giving up? No way. Yeah, that's it. I realized I missed my chance and I shouldn't bother him anymore. I'm truly sorry, girl. I wanted you to be a part of our family. I know, Anna, but apparently your wishes and mine aren't enough. John could only do one operation a day. His father did the rest, though it was hard for him to stand at the operating table for 2 hours at a time. Son, I can't take this much longer. My back hurts, so get out of your depression and get to work. I got it, Dad. Everything's gonna be okay. One day, he finally saw her. Alice had her back to him, but even at that distance, he still recognized her. His heart was beating so fast, he was ready to jump out of his chest. He was ready to run to her and hug her tightly and not let her go anywhere else. But the running was like a slow-motion movie, and the more he tried, the slower he got. He was getting close. She was so beautiful. Alice turned around, smiled her smile, and he woke up. Even though it was a dream, he was still happy that he had seen her that way. He thought about who could help him in his search for Alice and remembered his school friend, with whom they ran away from classes together and played on the same soccer team. Only now, Steve had his own detective agency. Quickly dialing his number, he offered to meet and talk. After hearing his friend's story, Steve promised to help, and the next day he took on the case. A week later, he was able to report to John that Alice was out of town. He suggested waiting a couple of weeks, maybe she had gone on vacation, then he would be able to say exactly where she was. Meanwhile, he went to the institute, where he learned very interesting details. It turned out that Alice transferred to a branch of the law university. Steve found out in which city it is located and went there. Documents she really turned in, but where she lives, no one knew. At the police station, after showing the documents, he asked for help. He was promised help and went home with a light heart. A week later, a policeman called Steve and said that Alice had registered at her aunt's house, but did not live there. That aunt doesn't know where she is. What aunt? John said in surprise. She never told us about her. Well, let's wait until the last session at the institute. She'll definitely come there and we can talk to her. But for now, I'll be patient. I've lost my job. I've blamed everything on my dad. I've got to stop suffering. I like your attitude. And remember, everything will come true if you don't want it to. The words of the great Renevskaya. You can trust her. Got it. He's been tormented by his parents, saying that it's high time to come to his senses and start looking for a good girl because he's about to turn 28. You don't think it's that easy, darling. You've had so many of them, and only this gray mouse caught your eye. You should give Ariana another chance. She loves you so much. I don't love her, and I never have, John said angrily. How long can you chase a ghost, this illusory happiness? You mustn't go into a panic, as if your favorite toy had been taken away from you, and you become a weak boy without it. And they also say that women are weaker than men. Now I see that it's men who have a harder and more painful time breaking up with girls. I don't like you like that at all. It's time to get back to life. He himself understood everything and tried to occupy himself with work, not to think about Alice. And it was saving him. John's life was getting better. He was surrounded by so many women he hadn't really noticed before. The news that the handsome John became free quickly traveled all those who wanted to comfort such a man. But he was not ready for a new relationship, not having completed the old one. The man did not give up trying to find Alice and talk. But days and months passed. To remember her features, he closed his eyes and remembered their meetings, walks, their nights. It was all so fresh in his memory. For the entire next 6 months, he wandered the streets alone, especially the places where they had been together. Toward the beginning of the last session, John drove himself to a branch of the law school, but what he heard killed him. Alice had passed early. And the diploma? Did she get her diploma? No, but she had her diploma notarized by her aunt Victoria. Did I answer your question? Yes, thank you. Like a trained detective, she anticipated his moves and was proactive. She's running away from him as if he'd done something irreparable, and she doesn't want to see him. Well, then he'll end his search and start his life over, but without Alice. He felt how tired he was of all these searches, of waiting for something that would help him relieve the guilt of their separation. A year passed. John was still alone, but his heart did not beat so often at the memories of a year ago. Alice was no easier. She was staying with her aunt, her father's sister. She was a quiet, kind woman who had buried her husband long ago and lived alone in her 2-room apartment. The arrival of her niece made Victoria very happy. She hoped that her arrival would distract her from her gloomy thoughts. When her niece told her that she was pregnant, she took care of her like a fragile crystal vase. Alice learned that she was not alone a month after her escape from John. It was on that romantic night. Fate had decided so, apparently, knowing in advance that this night would be the last. Her conscience tormented her, because it was John's child and he, as a father, had a right to know about it. But Megan insisted on an abortion. You don't want this baby, have an abortion. You're still young enough to have children. The situation was saved, as always, by Harry. He rarely interfered in the conversation between mother and daughter, only in exceptional cases. This conversation he did not like, and the word abortion, in general, a terrible word, and he opened the door of the daughter's room sharply and said loudly, "When will this end? How long are you going to dictate what this grown woman should do? How do you know if she wants this child or not? What right do you have to push her to kill a child? I'm a mother and I know what my child needs. A child may be better, but not a grown woman who decided to become a mother so that I'll never hear that dreaded word abortion again. And you, my daughter, if you want to carry this child and it's dear to you, go to Victoria. You'll be at ease there. She'll look after you and help you with everything. I see that some people here have taken on the role of a doomsayer." He glared angrily at his wife. Megan pressed her thin lips together, but she wanted her word to be the last. Think about it. A mother would never wish ill. Or do you still love him and want to have a child of that miracle surgeon's reproach in front of your eyes for the rest of your life? Yes, I love him and I'll always love him, but he doesn't need me. I'm not ready for such a man. I will go to my aunt. I love her very much," Alice cried and said. On his 28th birthday, John left the city not to receive guests and congratulations. He didn't want to hear the same words spoken year after year. Anna, of course, was upset. She wanted to gather in a large company, to talk, to see her son happy. But it was not destined to come true. The son was adamant. He, in general, after the breakup of relations with Alice, became tougher, and she even seemed rude. The mother thought it was the cost of the unwanted friendship her son had made. Alice couldn't deny herself the urge to wish John a happy birthday. The message was short. She wished him happiness. Looking at the text message, he realized it was Alice, but the number was undetectable. He noticed that he didn't get excited. His heart didn't pound like before. Time had done its work. They were becoming strangers. He didn't even realize that he had become the father of a beautiful daughter, whom her mother had named Anna. Anna, it sounded beautiful, melodic, she thought. Aunt Coraline was her helper in everything. What would she do without her? John was slowly getting over his failed relationship with Alice, and she was getting herself worked up and wondering if she had done the right thing a year ago, and answering it herself. Of course it was right. It is necessary to calm down and live on. The young mother talked to herself, taking small sips of tea. 2 more years later, John got married. He was already 30, and he realized that if he didn't marry for a couple more years, he would never marry and his mother would never have grandchildren. The girl, who was 5 years younger than him and named Martha, was pretty. She worked as an instructor at a fitness center, and they met at a cafe where she stopped for a snack. John sat down at her table, and that's how their acquaintance began. Anna didn't like her. Why you always find the wrong women? I like her. She loves me. She's smart. She's pretty. She takes care of me. That's all I need. She makes me feel at ease. She loves him. How can someone so handsome not love you? And you? Do you love her? Or don't you care who you marry? What are you talking about? How can it be indifferent? I choose a wife for life. That's right, for life. Will you put up with a smart, pretty one for life? Or is that not enough for married life? Mom, it's okay. We've been holding hands for a year and a half. How long? They're holding hands. I know how young girls today have pens. She's not pregnant. Not yet, but we're working on it. Now you're talking about holding hands. He laughed at his perceptive mother and was surprised at his own laughter. It had been a long time since he laughed so heartily. The wedding was beautiful. The bride in her lace gown, no other than couture, was marvelous. The whole female half of the fitness center envied Martha and did not understand what this handsome plastic surgeon found in this Martha. A small butt and breasts, so bad, but the face smarmy. That's all her virtues. She's a bit of a roughneck. But somehow she became John's wife. Alice found out about John's wedding on the internet. That's it. She scrutinized Martha's features, looked at her gorgeous dress, but most of all, she looked at John. So Anna, your dad got married. Yes, he did. Well, you and I are fine together, aren't we? You're my beautiful girl. That night she couldn't sleep a wink. She kept picturing John and that Martha together. Then she imagined herself in a white dress next to John. She didn't fall asleep until morning. The only question on her mind was, why not Ariana? She had run away from him so that John would be happy with her. What could have happened? Alice thought, was John really telling her the truth when he convinced her that he had never loved Ariana? She covered her face with the palms of her hands, but she didn't cry. What if my sacrifices were in vain and no one wanted me? After the wedding, the young couple traveled to Europe. That's where they spent their honeymoon week. Martha immediately said she didn't want children yet. I just started to live, so I should give birth and stay at home with diapers and cradles. No, I don't want to do that, and don't let your mom tell me what I should and shouldn't do all the time. John noted to himself that his wife was no Alice. He even before the wedding bought an apartment and managed to make repairs there, but it was empty and uncomfortable. Therefore, after a week's vacation, the young couple had one more pleasant event, moving into a new dwelling. It was a large and bright apartment, as on the 20th floor. Martha had never had her own place. She was traveling on rented apartments, and now such a luxury. But a pleasant hassle it is to buy furniture, curtains, dishes, but also to live through the first mismatch of tastes. With Martha's temperament, it was bound to be as she would say, but John stopped her at once. I like that you're zealous in your endeavor. But don't forget, I'm going to live there too, and you'll have to consider my wishes too. He said it quietly, but so plainly that Martha was afraid that their married life might end before it began. You're right, darling. I got a little carried away and quickly smoothed over my spouse's conflict. It's good that you understood everything, because I don't like to repeat myself twice. She looked at her husband and thought that he is not as simple as it may seem at first glance. It was evening. John and his wife sat on the loggia and looked at the first appearing stars in the huge city. They could see everything from the 20th floor. Cars whizzed by and people seemed so small. It was as if the city was waking up after a hot day. The coolness invited everyone to relax and enjoy the beautiful evening. What a nice breeze is blowing, Martha said, sipping her glass of red wine. It's a wonderful summer this year. John replied, what did you do all day today? He asked his wife, who had given up work and was all about herself. In the morning I went to the girls to the fitness center, then went to the hairdresser, went shopping and was so tired that I decided to take a bath and relax. Maybe we could go out. A club, maybe, and listen to some music. Our lives are so boring. I'm not bored at all. I had 3 surgeries today. I've been at the table for 6 hours. That's why I don't feel like going to any club. You're just saying that to rub my nose in the fact that I don't work and I'm living off you. Not at all. I asked you not to work. You said yes. So be my guest. But you and I must understand that I'm not sitting in the clinic. I'm working, and I'm working hard. So don't take offense. If I don't work, we won't have the standard of living we're used to. You don't have to work. The clinic is yours. Hire 1 or 2 more surgeons, and you and I will vacation abroad." John looked at his wife and thought how bored he was with her, but he said aloud, "I'll think about your proposal. I'll lie down in my office tonight." "Yes, please. You're used to sleeping with me. If your mom knew that, she wouldn't be asking me about grandchildren all the time. He's too tired to make love to her." "You think I don't know you're on birth control pills? Who are you kidding? I want a family. I'm 35, you're 30. Mature enough to have kids. 5 years of married life was long enough for you to enjoy life for yourself and have a baby. Maybe it's not my fault we can't make it work," Martha said resentfully. "Are you saying I'm infertile? Well, let's get tested together. I don't see anything wrong with that. Tomorrow I'll wait for you at my clinic. We'll take all the tests required to answer this question. I'll do it myself at the women's clinic." "No, you will come to my clinic. Got it?" "Got it." She already regretted saying it, but it's the same thing. "Why don't we go together tomorrow? You'll get up at 7 a.m. "I'll be up, don't worry," and she went into the bedroom. And John lay on the couch in his office and wondered why he lived. Work, 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 home and work again. Money, money. The house needs this, the house needs that. Everything is necessary and necessary. He doesn't want anything more, he's very tired. Maybe it would be really worth it if we could get at least 1 surgeon. He should consult his father, was the last thought that flashed through his mind before he fell into a deep sleep. Martha didn't get up at 7 o'clock, and he didn't want to wake her. Writing her a note to wait for her at the clinic, he quickly ran down the stairs, and with a squeal of tires, his car sped off. Martha didn't wake up until 9 o'clock. It took her only an hour to take the test. She was in such a hurry that she was late for work, but all she wanted to do was to get to the store where she had put aside a beautiful cloth yesterday. Today she had not forgotten her card, to which her husband transferred a tidy sum every month. Meanwhile, not far from John, his beautiful daughter was growing up. Alice was still alone. No, of course, she had men and felt that she liked, but as soon as it came to bed, she could not overcome herself. Nausea came to her throat, and she could not do anything about it. After several attempts, she left this idea to arrange a personal life. For the first time, she admitted to herself that John was her man, and it was only with him that she had known love and was at the pinnacle of bliss. Time was passing, and with it her beauty and youth. She decided that she would devote her life to her daughter and do everything to make her Anna happy for her and for herself. The older the girl grew, the more she looked like her father. Only her eyes were her mother's, but she looked just like John. At the age of 7, Anna asked for the first time where her daddy was. Alice had been waiting for this question for a long time and prepared for it. She decided not to turn the child against her father, and he really wasn't guilty of anything. For the first time after the question was asked, she showed his picture. "What a handsome daddy I have." With delight said the girl, "And you mommy is also very handsome, so I'll be beautiful too." "Yes, you are already beautiful," said the happy mom proudly. "Tell me about daddy," the daughter began to ask more and more often. "Your daddy is a very talented plastic surgeon." "What does that mean?" "It means he makes people beautiful. He's a very kind, decent man." "Mommy, if daddy's so good, why aren't you together?" "Here, my daughter, I have to tell you, a lot of it is my fault. When you grow up a little, I'll tell you everything." "Okay, mommy, but don't cry, okay?" "Okay, my dear, I won't." As soon as her daughter fell asleep, Alice took the laptop into the kitchen, went on social networks, and found out the latest news about the best man in the world. The test showed that John was fine, but Martha was having problems. The doctor wanted to talk to John's wife first. Seeing the fear in her eyes, the doctor reassured her. "Martha, your test results are here, so we'll have to talk to you for a while to get the whole picture. The only thing you have to do is answer my questions truthfully. Do we have a deal?" She could only nod. "Let me take a look at you first, right over here on the screen." When the examination was over, Catherine asked, "Have you had many abortions?" Martha was silent and looked at the doctor with frightened eyes. "I see. How long have you been taking birth control pills?" "Not long, a year or so." "Martha, we had an agreement, really. I can see everything in the test. You're ruining yourself. The least you've been on the pill is 5 or 6 years. First abortions, then the pill. And you want to get pregnant after all that. The pills you've been on for so long have caused atrophy." These drugs have created an artificial monthly cycle in your body and suppressed the normal natural cycle. I will not load you with various terms. I will only say that as a result of long-term use of these drugs, you stop the growth and development of female germ cells. Did your doctor prescribe the pills, or are we our own doctors? The woman said with her head down. My friend brought me from abroad. Very good pills. Never once failed me. I think they have. You can't get pregnant. You, as an adult woman, should know that you should choose pills only on the recommendation of a gynecologist, not on your own desire. When did you become sexually active? When I was 17. And when did you have your first abortion? 19. Is there anything I can do to help, or have I already messed up? I need to recover. And she told me in detail what to do and how to do it. You're still young. Your husband is healthy and strong. You'll be fine. With the pills, she gave her a day-by-day, hour-by-hour schedule, and she asked her to go to some of the treatments. I ask you, not as a doctor, but as a woman, don't tell my husband about my early abortions and their number. He doesn't need to know, does he? It won't help me get pregnant, but rather the opposite. Can I count on you? And she looked at the doctor with the eyes of a beaten dog. You can, the doctor replied with some squeamishness. At the end of the day, John came in to see her. What's the matter with my wife? Trying to be cheerful, asked the man. Do you need treatment, John? From what he asked seriously. From prolonged use of birth control pills. You're a doctor yourself and you realize that it doesn't go without consequences. There, you've probably had abortions too, haven't you? John, darling, why do you need to know that? And she reassured him with the patient's words, it won't help her get pregnant. I get it. Thank you, Catherine. Martha took a cab and quickly drove home. She cooked dinner as John liked, set the table nicely, and like a good wife, waited for her husband. He was in no hurry to get home. He decided to walk along the embankment, to breathe the air he was so rarely in nature. Sitting on a bench and exposing his face to the sun, he thought about his wife. So Martha had a number of abortions and had been on birth control for a long time. Mom was right this time. I picked the wrong woman. I'll come home later. Let her go to bed. I don't feel like seeing her tonight. And Martha realized that the throne beneath her was wobbling. The doctor must have told her husband about her turbulent youth, but she didn't want to say goodbye to everything around her. If John didn't want to see his wife, Martha was afraid to look her in the eye and hear that they were getting a divorce, afraid to go back to the rented apartment and live from paycheck to paycheck. And she would never find such a handsome man again. She quickly extinguished the candles, changed her clothes, and went to the bedroom. Martha thought to herself and closed the bedroom door tightly. John entered the apartment well past midnight. He was happy that Martha hadn't waited for him. It was too late for dinner, so after a glass of water and a shower, he went to bed and fell asleep. Martha heard John come in, but she didn't come out. She didn't seem to be breathing at all. She had never been so afraid of breaking up with a man. It wasn't even the man, but what the man had that she wasn't likely to get in a divorce. Her soul grew cold as she thought back to her life 5 years ago. The money at the fitness center was more than modest, and Martha's needs didn't match her financial possibilities. She wanted to rent a better apartment and dress and rest, and how to get married without all this. She should know how much effort it takes to please a man. Outwardly, she was attractive. Taut figure, small stature, black as tar hair, always styled and groomed. She knew how to make an impression. Even with her temperament, she had not managed to pull John under her. He immediately defined the boundaries of permissible. When they had just moved in, and she was enthusiastically sorting out the suitcases, she came across a photo album. Looking through with interest, she saw quite a few photos of Alice. Gathering them up, she asked in her hostess voice who it was and what these photos were doing in their house. And what are you so confused? Calmly asked John. This is a good friend of mine. That's it? Just an acquaintance? You don't need to know the details. It was before you, and it doesn't matter now. Then why are they here if they don't matter? Can you answer me? I've already answered everything. Do I have to account for my whole life before you? When you married me, did you think I'd sit around for 30 years waiting for you? That's very presumptuous. No, of course I didn't think that, but keeping a scrapbook of your exes is also rude to your wife. Those pictures are in my album, not the family album. Put them back where they belong and calm down. They'll stay there as long as I want them to. And she realized that she shouldn't talk to him in a raised tone and pry into his private life. even if it was his past. It seemed to her that he didn't value their relationship very much, and she was scared to the point of trembling, afraid of losing it all. Martha looked at her watch. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was still awake, but in the morning, she got up before her husband and made breakfast, which was rare. John got up at 7 in the morning as usual and decided to go for a run. He didn't have surgery in the morning and could afford to come to the clinic later. He looked for the Walkman that Alice had once given him, but couldn't find it. "Tymia, have you seen my Walkman? I want to go for a run." "I threw it away. It was old. I bought you a new one, the latest brand. Here it is," and she handed him her present. He slammed his fist on the table, struggling to hold back the urge to throw something at her. "Why are you throwing away my stuff? Who asked you to?" "What did I do? I threw out old junk. I bought you a nice new Walkman." "I want my old one, but take this one back." He didn't feel like running, so he packed up and left for work. It's a good thing he was alone in the car, because what he was saying wasn't meant for anyone's ears. But he let off some steam and arrived at work calm and ready to meet his patients. After work, he went to visit his parents. Finally, the mother said excitedly, "I miss you, son. You've forgotten all about your mom. Sit down, I'll feed you. I'd love to eat your specialties. Want some soup?" "Sure, I'll have everything. Bring it over. How are things with your family? How's the wife?" "Mom, I want a divorce." "Oh yeah, you made a fortune, and you said you choose for life, remember?" "No, I don't, but I believe my mom," he said, smiling. "I hope you're kidding, or are you serious?" "Oh, Mom, I don't feel like going home. I don't like your Martha very much, but you got married. And not wanting to go home isn't gonna solve your problems, John. You have a family, and if there's a problem, it shouldn't be solved by divorce. It should be solved by sitting down across from each other and talking. If your dad and I didn't do that, maybe you wouldn't even be alive. Come on, eat up and go home. You're a man, and you're supposed to solve problems, not hide from them. You didn't know her at all, and you were right about her. You don't even have to know her, you just look at her and it's obvious." He said goodbye of his parents and went home. Anna was in the 1st grade and pleased her mother with her success. At the parents' meeting, the teachers praised her for her activity, her desire to help others, for her easygoing character. Alice was pleased when the teacher Juliana talked about her daughter reading better than anyone else in the class, fluently, like an adult. John was proud of his daughter too, if he knew he was a dad. She was drinking tea. Half an hour lunch break was coming to an end, when she was torn from these pleasant thoughts by a call from home. Her father was calling. "Daughter, Mom's gone." "No, I talked to her 2 hours ago." "What happened?" Alice screamed. "I went to the store to get bread, heard her talking to you, came back about 30 minutes later. I looked in the room and Megan was asleep, so I didn't bother her. An hour, 2 hours later, I went to see her, and she wasn't with me," and he cried like a baby. "Come, my daughter, I can't do it alone," and he hung up the phone. She left her daughter with Victoria and went to her father's house. Megan had a massive heart attack. She felt sick as soon as she hung up the phone after talking to her daughter. Her eyes went black. She managed to pick up the phone, but could not dial the cherished number 991. When Harry came in from the store, she was already dead. A good death, said the women at the funeral, did not suffer herself and did not torment anyone. For relatives, of course, it is a strong blow, they said, looking at Harry, aged 10 years and bent, as if from a strong blow under the breath, from which it was difficult to breathe. Alice also looked no better, but held on. They remembered what a hostess she was, how delicious she cooked, and of course about her tough character, which would be more suitable for a man. Alice lay in her room and thought about how to live on. She couldn't leave her father alone, so she had to move in with him. She would take Victoria with her. She'll help her around the house and her father won't be so lonely. "Daddy, I'm going away for a while. I'll quit my job, and we'll all come to your place. You won't mind Aunt Coralie moving in here?" "No, I'd love it." "That's good, be patient. I'll be back soon." And hugging each other, they parted. There was a dense silence in the house. Only now he realized he was alone. His wrinkled face was frozen in an expression of longing, and the tears rolled down by themselves. How hard it was to be left alone in his old age, without a loved one, with whom he had lived. It was terrible to say how many years. Sure, he would have his daughter, his granddaughter, his sister with him, but it was all wrong. he wouldn't have his Megan with him anymore. Victoria had gotten so used to Anna and Alice over the years that when the latter said she was moving in with her father, she was sad. But when she heard that she was going with them, she was very happy. Alisaka, my apartment is privatized. I bequeathed it to you. Do with it whatever you see fit. If you're short of money, you can rent it to tenants or sell it, or maybe you want to keep it for Anna. You're the only one I've got. She returned to her father a week later. It seemed to her that he hadn't gotten up all that time. Why would I get up? I'm lying in bed waiting to meet Megan. No, Daddy, you can't go there yet. Come on, get up, go get cleaned up, and we'll have lunch. Like an obedient child, he did as his daughter told him. He felt disgusting. He could stare for hours at the iconostasis he had made from his wife's photographs. Alice did not know what she could do to distract her father. He went into a deep depression, lost the taste for life, ceased to be interested in anything. He was immersed in his grief. It took 6 months for Harry's eyes to brighten, and he began to take an interest in his granddaughter, meeting her from school and helping her do her homework. After school, she would ask him to go for a walk with her. They could go to the park or to the embankment, where they had a great time. Once my grandfather suggested that she read her a bedtime story. Grandpa, I can read perfectly well myself. I know, but I want you to dream fairy tale dreams at night. So listen. Alice wasn't feeling well herself. The stress of losing her mom, the stress of a depressed dad who was literally dragged out by his hair, just like Munchausen. She had to see a doctor. Honey, your blood pressure is elevated. Are you taking anything to lower it? No, I don't feel it. That's not good. You could have a stroke. Have you had a checkup recently? I've never had one. Let's take care of your health. You're so young, but you look tired and sickly. I don't really feel well. I'm tense all the time. After my mom died, I can't recover. My dad's not feeling well. I can't get a job. And I can't sleep. Take some tests and we'll see what we can do for you. And buy these pills and take them for high blood pressure. And get into the habit of taking your blood pressure every day so you can react in time. Reluctantly, but the woman still had to go through all the specialists, take tests, and come to the doctor for a verdict. The doctor looked at her blood tests, looked at Alice, and asked for a repeat blood test. Do I have something wrong? Alice asked fearfully. Let's not worry for nothing, but we will talk after the second blood test. Alice sat in front of the doctor and waited to see what she would say about the second blood test. She didn't look well. She hadn't slept at all during the night. Yesterday again ended in nothing. She could not get a job anywhere. It was a shame to live on her father and aunt's pension. She was ready to work as a secretary in some firm and was even ready to undergo training, but so far there was no one willing to take her even for such a job. Sweetie, you need to get better first, and then get a job. Managers need healthy workers, and you have it written all over your face that you feel unwell, to put it mildly. Your blood work is bad. Your white blood cell count is elevated. What does that mean, doctor? White blood cells are our everything. It's our immune system. It's our defense against the various enemies that threaten our body. So I'm fine. I have enough white blood cells to protect me. Not exactly. You have to have a certain number of white blood cells, and if they're higher than normal, it's a bad sign. I'll write you a referral to a hematologist, and I suggest you see an oncologist. For your own good, you should show him the mammogram. We need to check everything to get the right treatment. What about the mammogram, doctor? A specialist will tell you. My advice is don't delay. She was so tired she couldn't go to the doctors. As she left the hospital, she caught the eye of a man who looked at her as if she were nothing, with absolutely no interest. She felt how pathetic and scary she must look now, but she was only thinking about getting home as quickly as possible. She didn't care about her own appearance. From the looks on her father's and aunt's faces, they pitied her, thinking that her life could have turned out very differently if she had been a little wiser. As a woman, she had buried herself long ago, and she had a feeling that the doctors would say nothing good to her. The word oncologist alone made her shudder. Victoria had tried several times to strike up a conversation with her about John, that he had a right to be involved in his daughter's upbringing and help her. You're doing it wrong. He's the father. Why don't you call him and tell him about the baby? He'd be thrilled. You've said he's never had kids in his marriage. So Anna's an only child, and you're depriving him of the joy of fatherhood. She didn't have the energy to talk, much less argue. You've lost a lot of weight lately. You don't sleep at night, you walk around like a lunatic. I can hear everything. If you're worried that you can't find a job, Don't be. I have some savings. I think Stjepa has some too. We'll live. If you don't want to tell John about your daughter, you'll have to take care of her. There's no hope for me and Harry, and you're dragging your feet. Think, girl, about talking to Anna's father. After she said that, she thought for the first time, what if she were gone? What would happen to the child? The father is like a child himself. Victoria is even older than him. An orphanage? And shuddering at these thoughts, she decided to write a letter to John, but he would receive it only when she was gone. After putting Anechka to bed, she sat down to write the letter. My dear John, it's me, Alice. If you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer on this earth. Life is such a clever thing. She already knew that our romantic dinner would be our last. It was a beautiful evening and a magical night that got me pregnant. Yes, I did it all wrong as always. On my mom's advice, I didn't tell you. You have a daughter. If she dares to come to you someday, you'll recognize her at once. She looks just like you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I never got married, because everyone else was dead before they even opened their mouths. I named my daughter Anna, but not after your mother. It was the name of my aunt's daughter, the one I lived with when I ran away from you. I knew you wouldn't find me at her place because you didn't know she existed. I knew everything about you. Every day I went on social media, I found news about Surgeon John. I'm sorry, my darling. You and I have gone from being two halves to being two lonely people. But I know you got married, and I couldn't even imagine someone else to take your place. You were a beautiful moment in my life. Now it seems like a beautiful dream. But then the morning came, and things didn't go our way. Why did I decide to write you a letter after all these years? I'm sick and can't take care of my daughter. My mom is gone, my dad and aunt are also elderly, and it will be difficult for them to lift my daughter. After mom died, I went back to my parents' apartment again. When I am gone, my aunt will send you this letter. Help Anna in this life, and I will pray for you in the next world. Goodbye, John, and forgive me for everything. If I could take back that beautiful time, I'd do things differently. And when I saw you outside the clinic with Ariana, I would never have run away like I did years ago, but I would have walked over and taken you to the registry office. But what happened is what happened. Anna only knows good things about you. I keep meaning to tell her the reason we broke up, but I can't find the words to explain my stupid actions to her. Goodbye. Alice? She read the letter several times, folded it in half, and put it in an envelope with John's address written on it. She realized that he would never forgive her for this inhuman act toward him. Maybe his daughter wouldn't either when she grew up, but that would be later. And now she had no strength. She needed to rest. The next day she could not go to the hospital, but decided to rest, so that with new strength to take up treatment. Daughter, you're scaring me. Sat down on the edge of her bed, said her father. You don't eat anything. You've lost weight. You have to fight the disease for the sake of your daughter, and you have not even started treatment, and you gave up. The disease is not stupid either. It's afraid of the strong, persistent, and retreats to those who are weaker. Wake up, my daughter. We need to eat to have strength. She got up and could only eat chicken broth. She couldn't eat anymore. She herself felt that all her clothes were hanging out. Indeed, the doctor was right. Who needs sick employees? She looked at herself in the mirror and was horrified. She ran her palms over her face, her hair. She didn't know this girl, but her eyes were still as big and beautiful. They were so sad, they reflected the loneliness she had been living with lately. She avoided looking into the eyes of her father, her aunt, and especially her girl, who was not guilty of anything, but was somehow involved in her game. They, on the contrary, looked at her and waited for her to finally get up and start living, instead of waiting for her to be taken to the cemetery. They saw Alice dying before their eyes. But to everyone's surprise, the next morning she got up, made breakfast, and everyone cheered up when they saw the same Alice. A little worried, she walked into the doctor's office. After looking at her tests, the doctor asked, "What are you complaining about?" "I have constant weakness, no appetite, trouble sleeping, and I have lost a lot of weight. These are just the first signs that the white blood cells are elevated. But provoke this condition can also oncology, endocrine pathologies. How long have you had this condition?" "Yes, as my mom died, I had a terrible stress. I talked to her on the phone, and 2 hours later my dad called that my mom died. It was just shock. It's been over 6 months. You're taking too long to see a doctor. Let me put it this way. I can just prescribe you antibiotics, but we need to figure out what the underlying pathology is. You know, you need to see an oncologist, and if he says you're not his patient, we'll start treatment. Don't delay, the sooner the better. She understood everything, but she was afraid. The oncologist said she had a stage 2 tumor in her left breast. She had to have surgery. He wrote a referral to the oncology clinic and repeated the same words as the previous doctors so that she did not stall for time. She was put on the waiting list because there were so many patients like her. Only after 3 months, she was able to get on the operating table. Before the operation, the doctor told her that she would have to remove the entire breast because the tumor is a decent size and there is a risk of its spread to nearby lymph nodes and organs. When he saw tears in the patient's eyes, he tried to calm her down. You understand, these are only recommendations and they do not oblige you to anything. The final decision will be made only by you. But I want to tell you that now you are scared and guided only by emotional and mental reasons. You have time until tomorrow. Think it over and we'll make a decision in the morning. She called her aunt at home, who advised her to listen to the doctor, or she would have to go to him again next year. In the morning, she agreed to the operation. She took it very hard. Her blood pressure was off the charts. Every day her aunt went to her house, bringing her broths, pancakes, fruit. She knew how much it cost. Aunt Coraline, I'm so ashamed. You buy me pickles on your pension. Don't give me fruit. The food here is good. Don't bring me anything. Give it to Anna. Don't worry, Anna gets the best. 2 weeks later, she came home. The father, meeting his daughter with the words alive, cried like a child. She was happy to see her daughter and hope was instilled in her that she would still live. 2 months later, she had a repeat blood test and her white blood cells had decreased, but not by much. The hematologist prescribed complex treatment, adding that she should eat well, rest more, try not to be nervous. Doctor, is that any way to live? Rest, do nothing, and don't get nervous. That's how only fairy tales live. So live in a fairy tale for the duration of your treatment. It will do you good and will not harm your health, but on the contrary, it will help you. Victoria was desperately short of money and decided to sell her apartment. Realizing that she would still need money for treatment and there was nowhere to get it, she advertised the sale. 6 months later, the apartment was bought and she could fully feed Alice and buy her medicine. After some time, Alice received disability group 2 and began to receive a pension, a small one, but it gave her the opportunity not to feel dependent. The disease receded for a while. Alice felt better, but for some reason she did not get better, although they ate well. Of course, her appetite was not brutal, but she ate a little bit of everything. 2 years passed. Anna moved to the 4th grade and still pleased everyone with her school achievements. Victoria was worried about Alice. She didn't look well. You should go to the doctor again. Your complexion is a bit earthy. I don't like you. Go, daughter, get yourself checked out. Get another mammogram. It's been 2 years. Dusenka, I'm so sick of these doctors. I don't want to see anyone. I'm tired of them. 2 years, day in and day out in these hospitals. I understand, but give me your word that for Anna's sake you'll go and get checked out. You know, you're my weak spot. Okay, I'll go, but not tomorrow, but I promise. She went 3 months later when she didn't feel well. Mammogram showed metastatic second breast cancer. When she realized that was it, she told her aunt about the letter and asked her to take it to John when she was gone. But the aunt had her own way and dropped it in his mailbox the next day. There had been no change in John's life for 2 years. Martha still couldn't get pregnant, but changed a lot during that time. She decided to go to work and not lead an idle lifestyle, which John was starting to get sick of looking at her. Martha went to work and home in the evening and had time to rotate around the house. Getting started, after 6 years of doing nothing, wasn't easy. But as her wise former roommate in the rental apartment had said, if you want to keep such a husband, turn on your brains if you haven't left them all in the beauty parlors. She chopped the truth, but after her words, everything became clear and understandable as 2 times 2. Do you think you and John have a normal family? You go all day on salon saunas when he at this time is not easy to earn money, standing for 6 hours at the operating table, and you squander this money and complain that he does not go anywhere with you. You have a consumer attitude to your husband. No feelings here are out of the question and cannot be. Leave him and start a new life. Oh, come on, Shanna. I can't. I love him. It's not him you love. It's his money. At least admit it to yourself. Have you ever had a heart-to-heart talk with your husband? Asked how he was doing at work? Have you ever wanted to sit next to him in front of the TV? Put your hand on his shoulder and talk about anything? No, he gets tired, he has dinner and goes to sleep. I understand him and I believe he's tired. I just don't understand why he needs you. A man like that can find a healthy woman if he wants to. You can't even give him a baby. What does he need you for? Are you ready to change your stilettos for more comfortable maternity shoes? Yeah, I've been treated. I've done everything the doctor told me to do, but it's not working. So go to work. Show him that you love him, not for his money, but for himself, so that he feels a home, a family, not these endless trips to salons and boutiques. After that conversation, Martha went back to her old job as an instructor, and John took on a surgeon at the clinic. Now he had less workload and could take care of the clinic's business, which required constant attention. That day he had to fight with the workers who could not deliver another operating room on time. I do not come to you. You are always smoking. When will it end? I'll give you this month's salary only when I see the operating room ready. That's it. This is my last conversation with you. If you don't, I'll kick you out and hire someone else. Slamming the door, he decided to go home early. Martha saw her husband get out of the car and head into the driveway. Dinner was ready. She opened the door in a nice apron, all dressed up, put on a smile, and waited for the elevator door to slam. And John, walking into the entryway, opened the mailbox and saw a letter with a painfully familiar address on it. He leaned against the wall and immediately opened the envelope. It was Alice's handwriting, is Alice. He read the last lines as he came down the stairs. He was already running to the car. His hands on the steering wheel were shaking. He could not cope with the excitement. Alice, no, how can it be? Why didn't she come to me? So stayed with her stupid pride. Only now he realized why she had run away. God, what could she have seen outside the clinic? Silly girl. His heart was pounding and ready to jump out. He drove up to her house. Luckily the entrance was open. Someone had brought furniture, ran like a boy to the 6th floor, and rang the bell. Anna opened the door. Daddy? In front of him stood a girl exactly like him with Alice's eyes. She was a beauty. Daughter, my darling. The girl was a little frightened by these stormy feelings, although she knew that it was her father, the best man in the world, as her mother said. At that time, Victoria came up. Hello, John. It's good you came at once. You can still see her. So she's alive. She's not dead yet. I didn't listen to her and sent the letter to you as soon as she told me about it. Come in. Thank you very much. He went into the room and saw his fugitive. Her eyes were widened, but he could catch a smile on her sickly, tired face. They looked at each other and both were crying. He crouched on the edge of her bed and took the small, transparent, veined hand in his warm hand. I'm happy for them, Harry said to his sister, and you're so good for not listening to your daughter. Joan smiled affectionately at her and imagined the time when they had dreamed of getting married and having children. She deserved so much more than what she had condemned herself to. Today was a gift to her, a gift she dreamed of since she'd run away from John. He had long ago become a pipe dream for her, like those dreams of movie actors whose photographs she had been fascinated by in her distant youth. He was just as distant and unattainable, even though they had once loved each other. Alice, why did you do all this? Why did you do it? Then he realized it wasn't the time, asked his aunt for a blanket and scooped Alice up, saying he was taking her to his clinic. Victoria had time to put on his arm a bag with documents and the results of the examination of his niece. Having determined her in a separate room and created all conditions for her to rest, he said to bring another bed to the room. He would be with her, try to make up for the lost 12 years. The next day, he called to his clinic for a consultation with an oncologist, a professor. After examining Alice and familiarizing himself with the tests, he said it was too late, but it is possible to prolong life for 6 months. He gave a list of medicines, warning that they are very expensive, which can improve her condition for a while, described how best to take them. He said that some drugs were still in development. They were promised a great future and could be tried if they could be arranged and bought. John got everything. He made sure that her relatives and daughter were allowed to see her. She did get better. She was even able to go outside for a while to breathe the air. John, in love like a boy, the day they met, proposed to her. Do you remember what today is not? John asked the girl. No, quietly replied she. This is the day you and I met. Do you remember? It was raining hard and I gave you a ride home in my car. I can hear your teeth chattering from the cold even now." She nodded and smiled. "Alice, darling, marry me." He took out a red box, and only after she said yes did he put a ring on her finger, almost a child's hand. They stood in the park on the hospital grounds and embraced. "John, I'm tired and I want to lie down." He had extended her life for a year. During that time they had time to talk, to apologize to each other, to remember the beautiful moments of their lives, and finally to sign their marriage. During that year he had become friends with his daughter, who had become the closest person in the world to him. On the day Alice was gone, there was no sign of trouble. John had one surgery in the morning, after which he came to see Alice. He took her hand and talked at length about how he had been to France and she would definitely go there when Alice was better. She smiled, nodding back at him. She had never felt so good before. He talked, and she closed her eyes and quietly left the world behind. John did not immediately notice that his Alice was no longer with him, but when he looked at her, he cried. He was grateful to fate that for a whole year he was next to the one he had loved all his life. Harry could not bear the loss of his daughter and left almost after her. Anna and grandmother Coraline had always been very close people, and after the loss of their relatives, became even closer. The child felt the warm attitude of the woman and answered her in the same way. They lived together. John helped in any way he could. In the summer, he tried to send them on vacation to the sea. That day, when Martha did not wait for him for dinner, she called him several times, but he obviously didn't care for her. He came home in the morning and was happy to tell her that he had a daughter. She's 12 years old, and her name is Anna. "A daughter? You have a daughter? Where did she come from? Is she just another gold digger? I'd have to check if she's a daughter or an imposter. I'd ask you to keep your mouth shut about the money, lady. I know for a fact that I'm not being tricked. It's my baby. What if I have your baby? Or don't you want our child together anymore? I didn't say that. I'd love to have more kids, but we haven't worked out in years. It's payback for your youthful exuberance. Are you reproaching me? You never loved me. I don't know why you married me. You could have done just fine without a wife. I don't know why now. I don't want your daughter in my house. It's an eternal reminder of your turbulent youth. It's either me or your new daughter. Well, first of all, it's not your house, at least it's ours. And secondly, I choose my daughter, my own daughter. So we're splitting the property." "What property?" "The apartment was bought before the wedding. I own it, and you forgot that you haven't worked for 6 years. What here could possibly be yours?" "I worked at home. Doing your laundry, ironing, washing dishes, cleaning the apartment, that's work too." "All right, take whatever you want out of the apartment, that's fine with me. I'll see what I can get an apartment and file for divorce. But I want you to know that I really care about you. I'm sure you do. You blame me for living off you, but you asked me not to work. Tanya, let's not fight. We can still be friends. Will you give me money to pay the rent for a few months until I get a salary at work? Don't worry, of course I'll help." She lay alone in the bedroom again, thinking about how she would live now, and regretted that the fairy tale had ended so quickly. She caught herself thinking not about how she would live without him, but how hard it would be for her without his money. John had divorced Martha, and one day when he came home from work, he saw that half the furniture had been taken out of the apartment. The curtains had been taken down, all the appliances were gone, the TV, the electric fireplace, the bed from the bedroom, probably more, but John didn't care. She couldn't take away what was most important to him, his daughter. Anna was his joy and his pride. After the 6th grade, he transferred her to a school with an English bias, and in addition, she studied French and Chinese. She wanted to become a doctor like her dad. When Victoria passed away, she went to live with her father, and in that apartment, John started renovations. His daughter was going to have the best of everything. Grandma Anna and Grandpa Victor loved Anna. They said she was a Bogdanov breed and were very proud of it. For the first time in her life, the mother had to admit that she was wrong, that she ignored her son's love for Alice and imposed Ariana on him. "I must confess, the girl is very well brought up, smart. Well done, your Alice. I admit I was wrong." Her daughter finished school with a silver medal and entered medical school. Already from the first year, she attended her father's operations, gaining experience. Anna adored watching him, his magic hands when he stood at the operating table. He was so handsome, she understood her mom when she was young. When her daughter brought a young man to visit one day, John thought he was going to lose his mind. "Daughter, I hate all your boyfriends. I would kill them." Anna's eyebrows crept up. Seeing this, her father immediately began to justify himself. "But I'll work on it." Jealousy and possessiveness were tearing him apart. "I never thought that I would be so jealous of my daughter." To these, he did not want to say bum, but other more decent words he did not find. He shared with his parents. "Son, I'll tell you a secret. I understand you perfectly well." Jealous not only fathers of their daughters, but also moms of their sons. Oh, how jealous, especially of these, and they laughed, understanding each other. "You have to trust your daughter. She's a very sensible girl. And you don't want her to remain an old maid, do you? Do you know what it's like to be a grandparent? It's even nicer than being a mom or dad. Believe me, children are different, bad or good, but grandchildren are always amazing. Remember that, son."
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.